Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, offering convenient delivery and free pickup to help with the busy times this holiday. Online customers enjoy the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Get started in the Safeway app or at safeway.com.
The biggest fundraising day of the year in our state is happening today, Colorado Gives Day. It's a statewide show of support for the nonprofits that keep our communities strong. Last year, Coloradans raised more than $54 million in just 24 hours. And here's a fun tidbit. The first and last donations of the day both went to groups that care for donkeys. So yes, Coloradans love their nonprofits and really love their donkeys. And look at that, we just so happen to be on that list. And I have been compared to a donkey before, in a way. So if you're feeling generous or just want to support some local journalism, head over to coloradogives.org and search for Colorado Public Radio. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
Hee-haw!
Coming up, a political mainstay is being challenged from inside his own party.
This is a real question to test a new generation of leadership within the Democratic Party.
Then, it's a sobering moment for one of our state's most recognizable industries.
You have to have good beer, but you also have to have a good business plan.
After a year of decline, what's on tap for Colorado brewers in 2026? And if science was not your best subject in school, you might sympathize with lawmakers who need a helping hand.
Bringing in research fellows that are not tied to any political party, but are tied to issues that the legislature identified.
It's Tuesday, December 9th. Here's the news in Colorado today. Next year's primary election just got more exciting. That's because we could see a significant challenge to Senator John Hickenlooper.
Coloradans are really looking for fighters and people who will stand up for their values and for change.
State Senator Julie Gonzalez announced this week that she's after Hickenlooper's job. She argues it's time for a new generation of leaders in the Democratic Party in Colorado and beyond. CPR's Benta Birkeland has covered both Gonzalez and Hickenlooper for most of their political careers. Hey there, Benta.
Hey, Arlo.
So for those who aren't familiar with her, what do we need to know about Senator Gonzalez?
She's heading into her 8th year in the state Senate, and she represents Northwest Denver. She's from the progressive part of the Democratic Party, a big advocate for protecting immigrants and for tenants' rights. She also had a leading role in supporting legal abortion and policy protections in that area. She chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, and that's a very powerful position at the State House. And she's also sponsored a number of bipartisan bills with Republican colleagues.
But to take on Senator Hickenlooper, that's no easy task. He has one of the longest records in state politics. He's been mayor of Denver and served 2 terms as governor.
That's right. Now he's running for his 2nd term in the U.S. Senate. And it's definitely not easy for a less-known politician to challenge someone who's so prominent. Hickenlooper is someone most voters really know. And certainly there are going to be powerful Democrats who don't want to see a primary for this safe blue seat. But Hickenlooper is in his 70s, and Gonzalez says it's time for the Democratic Party to put forward people willing to very aggressively challenge the Trump administration.
This is a real question to test a new generation of leadership within the Democratic Party. Look, Senator Hickenlooper voted for Donald Trump's nominees, who have then gone on to wreak havoc on the lives of everyday Coloradans.
So it sounds like she's pitching a generational change.
Sort of. She's 42. She's about 30 years younger than Hickenlooper, and you heard her talk about it there. But she said she isn't really focused that much on their age difference. It's more their political views. She described Hickenlooper as a go-along to get along type of politician. And she doesn't think Hickenlooper and other Democrats have met the political moment the country finds itself in. And I will say throughout his career, Hickenlooper has definitely cast himself as kind of a political idealist. He looks for opportunities to compromise and work across the aisle, and he does try to avoid partisan rhetoric.
Okay, but focusing on that, is there room for that type of compromise in this particular political climate?
I think for a lot of Coloradans historically, that's something that's been very appealing. I do hear from especially unaffiliated voters, they want Congress to get more done. But I think what type of compromise and with who, that really depends on the type of voter you talk to. And I think it's a conundrum the Democratic Party is grappling with right now. How does the party respond to President Trump and this MAGA movement? Hickenlooper's campaign responded to Gonzalez's announcement saying that he's successfully fought a Republican push to sell off public lands, and he's now fighting, quote, the illegal chaos and outright corruption that has come to define MAGA and our president.
Benta, we've been hearing a lot of conversation at the national level about how dissatisfied Democratic voters are with their party. And it sounds like that's what Gonzalez is trying to tap into, right?
Yes, I think that's definitely right. And we're also seeing that dynamic in some other Democratic primary races as well. For instance, in Denver, in the House race, you have CU Regent Wanda James challenging longtime Congresswoman Diana DeGette. So we might be at the start of a moment of change, or we might not. I mean, these challenges both face some major hurdles, especially around fundraising, name recognition, and party support. For instance, Hickenlooper has more than $3 million in the bank for his reelection campaign.
Wow.
And we talked about this, but he's one of the best-known politicians across the state.
Yeah, definitely a race to keep an eye on. Actually, remind us, Benta, when is the primary?
It's the end of June, so we do have a while to see how all this develops.
Benta Birkeland, thank you so much.
Thanks, Arlo.
Here's something that won't surprise you. Things are getting more expensive. But here's something curious. Despite the increasing cost of things like gas, groceries, rent,
we've actually seen retail sales and consumption holding up. And so I think that's an indicator that consumers are perhaps on a stronger footing than we initially thought they would be.
Brian Lewandowski is an economist at CU's Business School, which just released its annual economic outlook for 2026. Colorado's only expected to add about 5,000 more jobs in this year's poor showing. But if nothing changes too much, the state should at least avoid a downturn or a recession next year.
Consumers and businesses are retrenching a little bit, expressing concerns about employment and inflation. Typically we take a look at that and worry that that's a leading indicator of what can happen to consumption and happen to overall output. But it hasn't really materialized in behavior.
One Colorado industry that could really use a little bit more of that consumption, breweries.
As someone who's been in the industry now going on 20 years, it's not what it was.
Nate McAlpine owns Reverence Brewing Company just west of City Park in Denver.
Unless wages come up or cost of living goes down, disposable income for treating yourself to a beer at the end of the week is just not always there for everybody.
McAlpine spoke with CPR's investigative reporter Ben Marcus about what it's like for Colorado brewers these days. Ben, I gotta say, not a bad assignment, although I am a little bitter you didn't invite me.
We didn't really get to enjoy any of the beer. Nate McAlpine, very nice guy. He tried to give me a few of his beers. After the interview, I did not take them.
How are things looking for people who are making our beer right now?
It's not an ideal time. There's so much competition in the marketplace right now, not just from like whiskey or seltzers or wine, but also from things like marijuana and even mushrooms. So when we looked at the beer sales data, and I've been keeping track of this for years, 2025 could go down as the worst year for sales in a decade. It's early still. Those numbers only go through summer. The Broncos are very good. And our data shows that when the Broncos are good, beer sales tend to increase.
Of course.
Seriously. So, the latter half of the year could end up being better. We don't know yet. But still, last year, about 50 breweries closed.
Is the culprit, is it Colorado's teetering economy?
I think the economy is part of the story, and I think partly as it relates to inflation. As prices are rising, people are rethinking that second $10 IPA, maybe at a local tap room. So you got competition, you have increased prices, and then you also have health concerns layered on top of that. The World Health Organization has warned that even small amounts of alcohol can be bad for your health, and surveys show that younger people are drinking less as well.
I'm guessing that all of that is making people like McAlpine nervous?
Yeah, but that's where there's a bit of a twist here. There are optimists in the industry, and if you have the right product,
You have to have good beer, but you also have to have a good business plan.
almost everyone I spoke to said that that business plan is really important right now because there's a lot of downsizing going on in the industry. So you have to find your niche. But there are models that seem to work, like McAlpine. There were several breweries in that location that didn't make it, and he finally hit on the right theme. He's brewing traditional style craft beers. He's got a great interior. It's like grandma's house vibes to it. People are seeing that if they can find the right formula, there is still a place for them to have success in this tough market. So even though 50 breweries closed in Colorado last year, another 30 opened.
So we don't need to make a run on craft beer, at least not yet.
No, years of that expansion are going to take some time to kind of wind down. The brewing capacity, again, is just too great for demand. So we will probably see some more closures, consolidations in the coming year. But this also creates opportunities for enterprising brewers like McAlpine, who was able to buy like $500,000 worth of equipment for less than $100,000.
So for me as a brewer, it was like kind of winning the lottery, and my patience kind of had paid off.
This is kind of a classic capitalism story. If you think your idea is better, then you can give it a shot. The CEO of Argonaut Liquor in Denver, though, told me that consumers are very picky right now, in part because of cost and in part because of competition. If you make a bad beer, you may not be around for very long.
Words to live by. CPR's Ben Marcus. Thank you.
Thank you.
The state laws that we live under, they're made by people who may not be that different from you and me. What I mean by that is that our legislature is made up of teachers, business owners, lawyers, retirees, military veterans, or in other words, people who often don't have a lot of experience with some of the issues and topics that they have to legislate. And that's where a new program from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science aims to help.
I see democracy as a team sport, and what I bring, the skill that I can bring, is scientific expertise.
Max O'Connor is a PhD chemist. She and another 3 science fellows will spend the next year at the Capitol, offering their expertise to lawmakers and the nonpartisan staff who draft bills. She'll be a resource as they develop policies on everything from medical research to building codes.
There's a lot of chemistry that goes into transmission. There's a lot of chemistry that goes into energy storage or energy generation or building materials. How a building traps and retains heat is chemistry.
The Science Museum's Institute for Science and Policy runs the fellowship program. Institute Director Kristen Eulenbrock says it was years in the making, but the basic idea is simple.
Bringing in research fellows that are not tied to any political party, but are tied to issues that the legislature identified as some ongoing, complicated, timely issues for them.
120 scientists applied for the 4 positions. The ones chosen include a microbial ecologist and an expert in AI and digital infrastructure. Fellow Samantha Ladoff comes from the world of global public health, and she's already fielding requests from lawmakers as they work on bills for the next session that starts in January.
I've done everything so far from preparing short, accessible science briefs that might summarize what the research says and what it doesn't say, to drafting longer science memos for lawmakers looking for a deeper dive.
Ladoff describes the science fellows as translators, turning technical research into useful information for policymakers. One of the fellowship's biggest advocates is Senate Minority Leader Cleve Simpson. Simpson is a School of Mines graduate and worked as a mining engineer himself. He acknowledges that this effort is starting at a time when the relationship between science and politics is fraught.
How do you change that dynamic? How do you build trust and faith in here in this body, the General Assembly, and can these policy fellows do that? And I'm very hopeful they can.
Simpson says most lawmakers are supportive, but for any who are skeptical, he'll work to bring them on board.
They're maybe a little reluctant and hesitant, that there's value in these fellows to bring really good information to us, but I'm very hopeful that we can demonstrate very quickly that that's not the case.
The first science fellowship runs through next October, but their work will really ramp up when lawmakers convene in January. Additional reporting for today's show came from CPR's Sarah Mulholland. Follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, offering convenient delivery and free pickup to help with the busy times this holiday. Online customers enjoy the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Get started in the Safeway app or at safeway.com.